Meeting to order. George, could you take roll, please?
Colonel Evans?
Here.
Mr. Grozan?
Here.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Mr. Naso?
Here.
All present.
Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that brings us to district goals. We reviewed our goals in detail on Tuesday at our board retreat, and we've agreed to stick to the same three goals, which are student achievement, financial prudence, and community engagement. I think you're going to see an example tonight, I know you're going to see an example tonight, of our commitment to student achievement when our superintendent tonight goes through his 2020 plan. And when you get into the details behind that plan and you see the granular level at which we go through and we plan, we do, we check, we adjust. And that's what this 2020 plan is. It's a living plan, and every year Cameron goes through and he looks at our test results, and he looks at the Ames web testing, and he talks with the principals, and he talks with the teachers, and then we see where we need to adjust, and we make those changes every year. So that every year we get better and better, and we drive towards excellence on student achievement. And I think you're going to see a nice, it's an interesting plan, and I'm looking forward to his presentation tonight. With that, that does bring us to public comment. We have one public comment. Michael Alcox, will you step up, name, address? You have 3 minutes.
I'm Michael Elcox, 13984 Trenton Oval, Strongsville, Ohio. This is really a continuation of 2 weeks ago where I requested to meet with George, and I did so. He was kind enough to spend about 3.5 hours with me, and we went over pretty much most of the details in the budget, especially where I had concerns on issues. I had about a dozen issues, and based on our review, we narrowed it down to about 6. But at the end of that, I think we had no disagreements as to the accuracy of the numbers we were talking about. But obviously, we probably had some disagreement on my conclusions regarding the validity of some of those issues. I'm going to attempt this memo, and hopefully I've distributed one to everybody up there, is to explain my reasoning in disputing these numbers. I'll start with the first one. The first one is purchase services, page 26 on the 5-year plan, and it's, I believe, off by $5 to $10 million. And let me explain that. And it's sort of the reasoning of how I went through with George in deciding whether things were dismissed or kept on this list. In 2017, you didn't spend $600,000 of POs. And as such, they were then added back to the 2018 budget as a special item. Since they weren't reversed in 2019, that $600,000 stays in every year of the 5-year forecast going forward. And therefore, the question is whether the new budget expense was consistent with historical budget expense. And in this case, it isn't. For example, this expense, which only totaled $6.2 million in 2015, $6.5 million in 2016, and $6.7 million in 2017, is now expected to be $8.4 to $8.7 million for the next 5 years. Okay, that's an increase of $2 million on a $6 million budget with declining enrollment, and we'll get to that in a moment. So I disagree with that. And I don't think George will dispute those numbers, but you can ask him, obviously. Second is a similar thing in materials and supplies. The issue is on page 28. It's totals $2 million. Again, you had $400,000 of unspent POs and budget not spent in 2017. It was added back as a special item in 2018 and not reversed in 2019. Again, it affects all 5 years of the budget. And again, your level of expense now is going to be $2.3 million a year going forward versus $1.865 for the average of the 3 previous historical years, again with declining enrollment. Capital outlays, $1.5 million on page 30. 300,000 of unspent POs added back as a special item. Same effect, 300,000 a year for the 5 years. And you are budgeted now to spend $1.2 million over the future 5 years compared to an average expense for the 3 previous years of only $539,000. So you're 250% increase in your capital outlays going forward. Assessed values of commercial properties is $4 million, and that's on page 6. Now, George and I were just discussing, I'm not sure, I have a difference that George didn't explain of $20 million of assessed valuations. We know that we're decreasing the commercial valuations by the middle school, by the Cleveland Clinic, and a trend decrease of 4.5%, which account for about $38 million of the $58 million decrease going forward. The other $20 million, I don't know an explanation for. And in fact, historically, we've been always very consistent about $330 million of commercial property valuations. And now we're falling basically, I believe, down to about $265 million, and I don't understand the difference. State aid, $2.4 million on page 13. In 2019 and 2020, $400,000, and in 2021 and 2022, $800,000 of state aid is state aid guarantee reductions are forecast in the budget with no reason. I mean, I asked George if anybody's proposed it, and nobody's proposed it other than a feeling that sometime in the future the state might take more money from us. But there is no reason for it to be deducted in the budget without any even inkling of notice from anybody that it's going to occur. And then finally, the student enrollment and salaries and benefits, and I added tuition paid to other districts of $3.6 million and salaries and benefits of $35.3 million. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with the $3.5 million of state aid to other districts. I mean, George and I have discussed it, but I threw it in here because of the reasoning as to its effect on the future student enrollment. This is the most complicated issues, and we can only use our...
Mike, so
Pardon me?
You're at 6 minutes, so could you?
I'm sorry. Well,
Okay, thank you.
We're basically projecting a $35.3 million increase in salaries and benefits over the future year. And I cited in here, if you read it, the last Jong study, which was worthless, really, because they were off in the first 5 years by 526 students, 4 years, I'm sorry, 526 students. But it did show the live births, which were in 2009, were 373. George was kind enough to update that for me, and I have the numbers, but apparently since 2009 through 2016, we've averaged 375 live births in Strongsville. And what's really remarkable is how consistent they were. The high during that 8-year period was 380, and the minimum was 356, which is really remarkably consistent. But it also points out to the number of students that we had entering our first grade over the last 5 years has also been extremely consistent. 2018 were, well, you can read it here, but
Yeah.
the average over those 5 years were basically 326 students entering. And again, very consistent, very little difference. So if you look at that and then go forward to the people we, in essence, have in high school, or excuse me, in middle school, you'll see that we basically had about 326 entering first grade. And what's interesting about that is with St. Joseph John having 706 students, if you take their average, that is not all from Strongsville, and our average, it comes very close to approximating the live births that we had over the last 8 years. So with 513 children, students graduating from high school this year, and with only a 326 average coming in, and as Mr. Ryba pointed out last year, and George and I went over the numbers, with middle school in increasing, that in essence weren't in 5th grade that are now going into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We checked that, and it was 44 students in 2018, and I believe 54 students in 2017. So if you add those back, it becomes apparent that in essence we're going to be basically losing 130 students a year for the next 5 years. I believe George's estimate was 100 this year, but in either case, it's going to be very significant. But another thing, and I'm not sure how much information this is, I just learned about Albert Einstein School. And I guess last year we talked about a 25 student enrollment from Strongsville in that school. Now this year, and I don't know if who knows what, but I checked their website. They have 3 kindergarten classes, 2 first grade classes, a 2nd grade class, and a 3rd grade class this year. And looking at that, and I didn't project any decrease for that school, but if you consider the fact that we're projecting a $400,000 increase in tuition to other districts this year, $800,000 in the future, that accommodates a lot of students and basically would materially impact my assessment adversely that we're going to lose 130 students a year. We could lose a lot more than that. But in either case, historically, and you can see the numbers in the report here, with a much lower decline than I'm projecting over the 5 years, we in essence have maintained a level salary and benefit cost over the last 5 years in the school system. And I think it's been very good. But you're projecting a $35.3 million increase in salary and benefits going forward with a declining enrollment of maybe another 650 students, which again, I believe is incorrect. It should be much lower than that or nothing like we have over the last 5 years. So in respect, I believe the budget is overstated, and I believe that the levy being proposed today is premature and not needed.
Thank you.
That's it.
We appreciate your time going through the budget, going through the numbers, working with George, spending the 4 hours that you did. I'm also a CPA and also a CFO, and I've gone through thousands and thousands of budgets in multiple industries and in public and private life. And where you guys disagree are on assumptions, and assumptions are the levers that drive the forecast. So how do we determine the accuracy of our forecast? We have to compare it to actual results. And since 15, 16, and 17, on a one-year out basis, we're within 3 or 4% year over year of our budgets. So with that, we feel that we have good accuracy.
Can I just give that?
I'm not discussing, I'm just talking, so you had your time. So we've had, within 3 or 4%, I'm looking at the numbers. In 16, we projected 16.2. We came at 18.3. It's a difference of 2.1. Take that by revenue, it's 3%. 2015, we projected 21.6. We came in at 24.2. It's a difference of 2.6. It's 4%. To try to tighten up on that accuracy, we lowered our inflation number for medical costs this year to try to get closer within that 4%. The other thing we do to ensure accuracy is we have the board, the administration, and a community panel on our finance team go through the budget and all the assumptions, and we work through it. At an added step last year, we presented the forecast and all our financial information to Moody's, and they reviewed all our data. And then they came in and they agreed not only was it consistent and accurate, but then they raised our rating, our bond rating for the district. I think we've been pretty darn accurate. I think I agree, if you were to tweak the assumptions that you say, you can ratchet this thing any way you want it. But to suggest that we're off in the range of 40 to 50%, when every year we're off 3 or 4%, I get it. If you go way back, there's different assumptions, there's different things that go on. But we appreciate your help, and thank you. With that, we'll move on to the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Naso. I have one discussion item on Exhibit A. It's the annual OSBA Capital Conference Delegate, Alternative Delegate Appointment, which will be held the Capital Conference is November 11th through the 13th. Next meeting, we'll vote on the delegate, but just opening up if there's any discussion. A lot of good topics that are presented at the conference for board members, superintendents, and treasurers. If you have the time to go, I recommend going. There's a lot of good topics covered.
Richard? Yes, George? Would you like to go? No, George.
I'll sign up I'm not gonna go all 3 days, but I'll go.
I'll visit my son.
You'll visit you could go then? Oh,
You asked if I wanted to.
okay.
You
Well,
asked if I'm going to.
it always seems like a burden that we put on Richard, so if you can't make it, I'll go.
That'll work.
I know your son's there.
Or we both can
We can
go.
both go, yeah.
Dang it.
That would be good.
Okay, item B, and the next three items are similar, but item B is the cafeteria change fund, setting that up for the fiscal year. Then our board policy, we close it out at the end of the fiscal year, reestablish it through board approval in the upcoming fiscal year. So the cafeteria change fund, the amount of $950, the middle school change fund in the amount of $500, then item D, the high school athletic change fund in the amount of $5,000. So this is essentially startup cash at the beginning of the year for the middle school and high school athletics, and then the cafeteria. And with that, if there's no questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. That brings the superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. Naso. As you shared at the beginning of the meeting, it is time for us to kind of highlight the 2020 plan that we had the past year, the successes we had. So I do have some slides to share with the community and to share with the board. So as we know, this is our 5-year strategic plan. The goals and objectives stay similar to each year, but the action steps change to look at how we can move forward in becoming a premier district in the region and state based on our 3 goals of academic achievement and growth, financial prudence, and community engagement. So what we do is each year, last July, we got together for a retreat. We actually had our retreat Tuesday of this week. And we get together and look at some of the action steps, evaluation criteria we're going to use to measure our progress in each of these goals. So as you can see under academic achievement and growth, we had 4 objectives this year. And each of the graphics there, the Mustang running, kind of shows the progress that we've made. Altogether for academic achievement and growth, we achieved 88% of the objectives that we set out for ourselves, and you could see how they varied throughout the objectives. But just highlighting a few successes that I think we should celebrate as a district. First of all, we set out to really align our high school and middle school coursework and a comprehensive review of secondary course offerings. And as we talked about before, although there's still some work to continue in the upcoming year, we made a major overhaul to our middle school schedule. We're providing double periods of English language arts and mathematics instruction to all 6th graders next year. 7th grade gets a double period of all English language arts and mathematics for students that are demonstrating some struggles in mathematics, and then a traditional schedule at the 8th grade level. So we're really excited about the opportunity to provide that increased instruction for our kids. One of the things we also looked at is how can we take our assessment package that we have internally and use it for some predictive value to how our students will do on state assessments. Now, this is not additional tests. We told our teachers we don't want to add more tests. We just want to say, if you're giving a Chapter 3 test in mathematics in 3rd grade, we want all 3rd grade teachers to give the same test. So across the district, we can ensure our kids are progressing the way that they need to be. And those have all been worked on last year, and those are in place starting fall of this year, pre-K to 12. We provided support. All of our buildings have to have building instructional plans, their plan about specific needs for the buildings to improve. And we as a district give oversight to those plans and support. And although the state test results are not officially out, we get preliminary results, but indicators are, how many tests we passed, how many kids reached that benchmark. The buildings that we gave additional support for, they met 16 additional indicators than they did last year on the state assessment, so we're very proud of that. We're implementing instructional coaches. We have 4 literacy coaches that will be working in the district next year for the first time. As I've shared, that is possible by a $1.2 million grant the district was awarded through ODE, which will cover 3 of those literacy coaches to help provide and enhance our literacy instruction across the district. We also had a focus of improving our writing instruction. And again, this is a state test measure, how the students did on that portion of the English Language Arts exam. You could see in grades 3 to 5, the writing scores we received increased by 10%. In grades 6 through 8, that's not a typo. They made significant progress. They increased their writing subscores by 196% as compared to last year. And then for the high school, that's end of course exam. The high school students in English 1 and English 2 increased their writing scores by almost 22%. And also, we are implementing a learning management system. This is an all-in-one system for our teachers to utilize in terms of how they teach, communicate, collaborate, grade, assess of our students through an electronic portal. And we have provided training for our teachers over the summertime, and we've had over 300 teachers sign up for that and being trained. They're being trained throughout the past few weeks and upcoming weeks. And looking at financial prudence, again, our sound financial management practices that align with our educational priorities. Altogether, we met 87% of those objectives, and you can see the variance through or the goal. You can see some of the variance through the objectives that we're focused on. So some of the things that our successes that we accomplished, George, in his transparency and work and through the budgetary process, completes the budget book per the ASBO guidelines and has a CAFR that he does per the audit each year. As Mr. Naso stated, we had a board finance committee with that focus of how do we address our financial outlook moving forward. We've executed a variety of capital improvement projects. As you saw, as Dan tweeted out on my behalf today, we had the HVAC unit going in at Chapman. We've converted it from an all-electric building to an all-gas building. All of the parking lots at the elementary buildings are finishing up with the repavement along with some sidewalk work at Maraski and some of the other buildings, and still some of the secure vestibule work to come. Earning, George on his investment strategy, comparing the investment earnings from this fiscal year to last, he's increased the interest income by over $300,000. And we had a goal of completing a cost-benefit analysis of having an SRO or security officer at the middle school. We exceeded that action step. We have a full-time SRO at the middle school, and we also have increased security officers through the Strongsville Police Department to help support our elementaries and preschools. So I think we should be proud of going above and beyond that to meet the safety needs of our district. Looking at community engagement, again, how do we collaborate? How do we build those partnerships with our stakeholder groups? How do we strengthen those school community bonds? We met 86% of those objectives. Some of the highlights that we wanted to share was to increase promotion of school district events. You haven't seen this yet, but all parents will receive a Strongsville City Schools district calendar when their children return back to school in a few weeks. It'll share some highlights of the district. It'll share upcoming events, and we'll have those around at popular community spots as well for any community members that would like to see our calendar. So I congratulate Dan on getting that off the ground and putting that into place. As we've talked about before, we've also developed a student liaison group. I work with a group of middle school and high school students that provide feedback on their experience at the school district, and we've sat and met with teachers about some of the issues that they wanted to solve moving forward. Dan has started an online apparel outlet, and as we talked about at our retreat, we're now working on how do we have a physical store on our campus so students can get materials and Strongsville gear to show their pride. We have a community advisory committee. Their focus this year was really on enhancing extracurricular opportunities, and I know the board is considering and has given me some items to go back and discuss with the committee in terms of enhancing extracurricular opportunities at the elementary schools for our students. And finally, we've instituted elementary nights at the football games last year. That really was just a great success of getting each of our elementaries there, and that's going to be expanded to other sports this upcoming year. And then for the first time in a long time, we reinstituted a distinguished alumni event, collaborated with the Chamber of Commerce, celebrated 3 inductees this past year. And again, this is something that will continue on into the future. So in a future board meeting, we'll be sharing some of the highlights of what's in store for 18-19 on the plan. But just wanted to provide the board and the community an overview with some of the successes that we had and overall how we did with our strategic plan and our work towards being a premier district. Any questions from the board?
Great job.
No, it was great. We saw it in detail the other night, and it's, you guys really are hitting it.
Thank you. The second thing is our opening school convocation. Obviously, students, as I start on August 20th, Monday, August 20th, we welcome back our 1st through 9th graders. On August 21st, we welcome back our kindergarten students and our 10th through 12th grade students, and on the 22nd, preschool students, and that will make everybody back together. But we start with inviting staff back formally. August 16th is new teacher orientation. I believe we have about 20-plus new teachers that will be welcoming to the district. And then Friday, August 17th, starting at 8:30 a.m. at the high school, is our first official kickoff, our convocation for the school year. And we're excited this year because it's the first time, based on how the calendar worked, that we will have all 700-plus employees at convocation. So it's typically been only about certified staff. So we're excited to have the entire group there to kick off to an outstanding 18-19 school year. With that, I'll move to curriculum. We do have a memorandum of agreement for internship. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that we enter into this agreement with Cleveland State University and the Strongsville City School District for the school psychology program as found in Exhibit B. And then the second item relates to that, that we place a student for a school psychology internship at the middle school with Jeremy Ryman for the school year. Any questions on curriculum?
Nope.
Human resources, we do have a resignation of leadership, as we've shared with the board. Andy Jawan, our athletic director, resigned to take a position in another district. We're currently in the interview process for that and wish him well in his new role in the new district. Going on, we have resignation of non-certificated staff as well as appointments of certificated staff and certificated substitutes. We do, as you may remember last year, we started a kindergarten screening process that will start happening in the coming weeks. And we do need some support for the health and speech and hearing screening and vision screening. So we have some stipends there for kindergarten screening. We do have a stipend for the interim treasurer for the work that Carol did for us. And then we have a medical leave for a non-certificated staff member as well for your consideration. And if there's no questions, that ends human resources and the superintendent's report.
Good job, thank you. That brings us to the consent calendar. All items with an asterisk get approved in one vote. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? There's no adjustments to the consent calendar. We're good to go. George, you want to take roll?
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. That gets us to Board of Education and other. Do we have any others? The only thing is that it's the tax.
Sales tax.
Dan sent out a blast, but this weekend, starting August 3rd at midnight through Sunday, 11:59, is a sales tax holiday. So if you're purchasing any school supplies, that includes clothing, things like that, I believe the limit is $70 per, $75 per item. That's per item, not total. So $75, you should be able to buy a pair of pants and another shirt and some shoes. But I think the key is that it's, you forego the sales tax. and that's in stores and online. So if you got to buy them anyways, you may as well save on the sales tax.
Excellent, that's this weekend. That's all, I don't, any other others? Nope. We have no need for executive session. That brings us to adjournment.
So moved.
Take roll. George?
Cordovans?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 7:31.
Perfect.